that Harry was running out there in 2018. Bex and the family, including Victoria, all go to Harry that you've got to dump all your friends. And none of those people at his shooting weekend were then.
Tom Bower, the legendary royal author, is sharpening his
Tom Bower released something people didn't see coming, and it's tearing apart the entire Sussex story from the inside out. Documents, timelines, private conversations now circulating online. A Colombian businessman you've never heard of before. Pregnancy records raising serious questions. Prince Harry? Sources say he's spiraling because there's one simple move that would have ended this in seconds, a DNA test. But here's the problem, it never happened. Once you hear why, you'll understand exactly what's at stake. Trust me, where this goes is going to shock you. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming. Like the video if you're already hooked. Now let's get into it. So let me break down what happened when all of this started going public, because the way it played out tells you pretty much everything you need to know.
From the tabloids. This is Buckingham Palace itself, the very heart of the monarchy, breaking its silence after years.
Look, if none of this were actually true, if the whole thing was just made up nonsense, there was one incredibly simple way to make it all disappear overnight. Get a DNA test done. That's it. No complicated strategy, no media circus, no going back and forth with statements and counterstatements. Just take the test. Wait for the results, show them to the world. Boom, done. Everyone moves on. It would have been the easiest thing in the world to do. But that's not what went down. Not even close. The test never happened. Not in public where everyone could see it. Not behind closed doors where it could have been kept quiet. Not even a whisper of it getting leaked to some tabloid or insider source. Nothing. Zero. And what did happen instead? Harry absolutely lost it. We're not talking about a guy who was mildly annoyed or frustrated.
This is the woman trying to teach us how to entertain on Netflix, this buzzkill. What else?
This was a full-on meltdown. Doors getting slammed so hard, people could hear it echo down the hallway. Phones getting launched across rooms like projectiles, and his advisors, the people who'd been working with him for years, helping him navigate everything, completely iced out, frozen. Like, they suddenly didn't exist anymore, cut off from any real communication. Now listen, think about how you'd react if someone accused you of something you didn't do. Something serious that could destroy your reputation and your family. If you knew for a fact it wasn't true, you'd probably feel angry, sure, but also pretty steady underneath because you've got the facts backing you up. You could prove them wrong easily. That kind of certainty doesn't need theatrics. It doesn't need all the drama and chaos. It just needs the facts to come out and then everything settles down naturally. But that explosion we saw from Harry doesn't look like confidence, doesn't match how someone behaves when they're absolutely sure they can shut down a nightmare with one simple action.
I must be really, really busy, but Megan, can you tell me what it's like?
Great to see you. You've got this block.
That kind of rage, that level of chaos, it looks more like panic. Like someone who's suddenly not sure about opening that door and looking inside. Now, Tom Bower really showed how smart he is about all this. He didn't come out swinging with direct accusations. He didn't stand up and say, that kid isn't Harry's, I've got the receipts. That would have been messy, too easy for people to twist or attack. Instead, he did something far more calculated, far more surgical. He just laid out the facts, let people connect the dots themselves, and then pointed out the obvious solution. Basically said, hey, if this whole thing's just a conspiracy theory, if none of it's real, you know exactly how to end it, right? The path's right there. Take it. Shut everyone up. But nothing came back. No test, no results, no answers. Just this really loud silence. And honestly, sometimes what you don't say speaks way louder than anything you could actually say out loud.
Everything she needs to help elevate herself. You know, like if you can't stand these people or the
when the easiest, simplest way to end a complete nightmare is sitting right there in front of you, available, doable, and you don't take it. People are bound to start asking questions. They're bound to wonder why. Where's the holdup? Why not just do the thing that ends all of this? And more importantly, are you worried about something coming out if you actually went through with it? Because that hesitation, that avoidance, it starts looking less like strategy and more like being scared. Scared of discovering the actual answer. Now let's get into something people avoided talking about for a really long time because, honestly, it made everyone uncomfortable. Archie's birth and how the whole thing played out. Tom Bauer pointed out that the documentation process around it broke away from royal tradition in some pretty significant ways.
It simply places him where he was never supposed to be, close enough to matter, far enough to deny.
And we're not talking about wild theories here. This is literally just comparing what happened to the standard procedure that's been followed for generations. Look at the pieces missing from the puzzle. Doctors weren't named publicly like they usually are. The hospital never got confirmed. Timestamps that always show up with royal births. Nowhere to be found. Standard medical announcements didn't happen. Instead, the information that did come out was incredibly vague. Statements that didn't really tell you much of anything. Appearances that seemed staged down to the last detail, like someone choreographed them. Details locked up tight with no real access. The birth announcement itself had this weird quality to it. Less like a celebration, more like a press release someone carefully edited multiple times. Now, take any one of these things by itself and sure, maybe there's a reasonable explanation. Maybe they wanted more privacy than usual.
Harry about that, and relations remained frosty between the four of them?
Well, I exposed that.
Maybe circumstances were different, but stack them all together, one on top of another, and suddenly it stops looking like random choices. It starts forming something that feels deliberate. And when things start forming that kind of pattern, people begin digging deeper. Tom Bauer was actually really strategic about how he presented all of this. He didn't stand up and declare, "This proves wrongdoing." He simply noted that none of it matches historical precedent. That's a smart distinction to make. The royal family operates on procedure, doing things the way they've always been done because tradition matters. So naturally, if those procedures suddenly break down, if the established pattern gets disrupted, people take notice and want to know why. Then, if those natural questions get met with silence instead of straightforward answers.
True in this case.
Setting up in California to spread wellness and love and
doubt creeps in and fills the empty spaces. By this point in the timeline, Harry wasn't just out there publicly standing by Meghan in interviews and statements. According to reports, something else was going on behind closed doors. He was becoming unsettled, beginning to ask himself things he'd always avoided thinking about, uncomfortable questions he'd been pushing down deep, not wanting to examine too closely. How come his son's birth felt so tightly controlled? Why did it seem so carefully curated, like someone was managing information flow? Why did the whole situation feel so cut off from the normal verification process that typically happens? And listen, those kinds of thoughts are dangerous once they take root. They don't just drift away quietly and disappear into nothing. They linger. They wait in the background.
Mountbatten Windsor arrived May 6th, not at their new home Frogmore Cottage like many had expected, but rather
they build up slowly over time. You might try shoving them aside, telling yourself you're being paranoid or reading too much into things, but they come back. Late at night mostly, when you're alone and can't distract yourself, or when fresh information surfaces that makes you reconsider everything again. Those doubts have this way of gnawing at you gradually, persistently, getting a little louder each time. Eventually, you reach a point where ignoring them becomes impossible, where you're forced to actually face them directly, deal with them head on, regardless of whether you feel ready or not. And for Harry, that moment was coming fast. So here's where things get really interesting. Columbia. And I'm not talking about some random one-time charity event that happened to be there. Columbia kept popping up in the story over and over again. Quietly, under the radar, but consistently present.
Images and short video clips we've seen of a child in America suddenly become far more mysterious. According to
Tom Bauer noticed this pattern and pointed out that when you look at the travel records, things don't quite add up the way they should. Charity trips with these weird gaps in between that nobody can really explain. Private planes appearing in situations where you'd normally expect commercial flights to be documented properly. And right in the middle of all these overlaps, Meghan was spending time in social circles that didn't quite match the public image she was selling at the time. Then there's this businessman who enters the picture. Colombian background, seriously wealthy, deeply connected with real power and influence. Not someone chasing celebrity status or trying to get famous. He didn't need that. He had the type of money and access where titles and fame become irrelevant. You know the type. Operates in circles most people don't even know exist. His name had never shown up in any mainstream media coverage before this.
It's timing. He doesn't lob accusations into the daylight and hope they stick. He waits. He watches.
Tabloids weren't writing stories about him. He was functioning completely off the public radar, which is usually intentional when you have that level of wealth. But then something interesting happened. Regular people online who just happened to be paying really close attention started doing work the mainstream media hadn't bothered with. They began cross-referencing dates, looking at when specific trips took place, when particular appearances were made, when information flow suddenly went quiet, and something became impossible to ignore. Every time Columbia came back into the picture in Meghan's life, it wasn't random chance. It matched up perfectly with periods where her personal narrative became unusually guarded and controlled. Baby announcements would shift or change unexpectedly. Medical information that you'd normally expect to hear about just disappeared completely.
Tom Bauer goes in on Harry and Meghan and their little upcoming Christmas with whatever they're really going to choose to do.
Public appearances got staged so tightly that every element felt choreographed and planned out to the second. This wasn't scattered randomness. This was a clear, repeating pattern. And patterns like this, they're exactly where skepticism turns into something stronger, where people stop giving the benefit of the doubt and start thinking, okay, something's actually happening here that we're not being told about. Because look, one unlikely coincidence you can brush off easily. Two unlikely coincidences may be still acceptable to chalk up to chance. But having this many coincidences all pointing in the same direction, all connecting back to the same location, the same individual, the same time frame, that stops being coincidence. That becomes something else entirely. And the really compelling part was that none of this analysis was coming from some
children went from quiet whispers to a full-blown global firestorm. Not just the UK, not just America.
Conspiracy theorist running a blog in their basement. These were regular people doing basic research, simply connecting publicly available information. No secret sources, no leaked documents, no inside contacts. Simply paying attention and documenting what they observed. The internet did something traditional institutions never expected. It noticed. It remembered. It compared notes across time and distance. And once those connections started getting made and shared publicly, they spread incredibly fast. Screenshots, archived posts, timeline graphics, all of it circulating, getting passed around, building serious momentum. With each new person who examined the information and said, wait, that actually does line up, the narrative became harder to dismiss as baseless speculation. Sometimes what people are looking for isn't buried in some secret vault somewhere.
Can you tell me what it's like?
Great to see you. You've got this blockbuster book. I've been reveling in your extracts. Very juicy stuff.
Sometimes it's sitting right out in the open air, simply waiting for someone to look at it carefully enough to recognize the pattern taking shape. All right, so now we get to the part that absolutely broke the internet wide open. It's 12:40 a.m. on the West Coast, middle of the night, when this anonymous account suddenly appears on X out of nowhere. 0 profile picture, 0 posting history, 0 followers, completely blank. Shows up, posts one single image, then disappears into the void. But that one image, complete chaos. We're talking about a hotel corridor with high-end lighting, clearly exclusive, private space. Definitely not some public area where random people hang out. Standing right there in the frame is Meghan Markle. She's not posing for photographers, not doing some carefully staged photo shoot, not looking polished or prepared for cameras.
There are moments when silence stops being calm and starts feeling heavy. This was one of them.
She's just there naturally, her body angled toward a man who very clearly is not Prince Harry. This guy's got his arm around her in a way that immediately made people stop scrolling. Not the way you'd stand with someone you just met at a business event. Not friendly handshake territory or casual acquaintance positioning. This looked comfortable, familiar, close in a way that made viewers immediately zoom in and start analyzing every single detail they could find. People went to work on this image instantly, like forensic analysts. Enhanced shadows to reveal hidden details. Matched frames from other photographs, compared body proportions, heights, builds. And here's the thing that became obvious really quickly. This man was definitely not Harry. Not even remotely close. He wasn't tall and lanky the way Harry is. Wasn't carrying himself with that royal posture Harry's been trained in since childhood.
Allegedly exposing long-concealed secrets surrounding the births of Meghan and Harry's children, Archie.
This guy was solid, athletic, moved with the type of confidence that comes from having earned wealth, not inherited titles. There's a huge difference between money confidence and monarchy confidence, and this was absolutely money. Then someone spotted the detail that flipped everything. On this guy's wrist, a leather bracelet with a distinctive metal cross. Seems like such a minor thing, right? Except the internet is insanely thorough when people get motivated. Within literal minutes, users had cross-referenced that specific bracelet to the exact same Colombian businessman who'd shown up briefly in some promotional footage from months back. Same bracelet design, same cross style, same everything. Once you saw them side by side, the connection was impossible to deny.
Treatment is going to be scaling back, and I think that hangs over him, but I don't think that he's high up on Charles' list of...
Now here's where things get even wilder. That account completely gone, disappeared professionally quick, not like someone got nervous and frantically deleted things manually. This was smooth, efficient, the kind of clean removal that happens when you've got serious resources backing you. But trying to scrub something from the internet in 2024 is basically impossible. Screenshots are forever. Doesn't matter how quickly you remove the source. Doesn't matter how thoroughly you try erasing every trace. Once something's been captured and shared, it's permanent. Lives on in archived threads, backup drives, cloud storage systems, everywhere you can imagine. You can't kill digital footprints anymore. Then Tom Bowers stepped in with this incredibly calm, measured response. Didn't sound angry or defensive or hurried at all. Simply stated, very matter-of-factly,
No, the first interview was, we all know that she never intended to go to the Portland hospital. She intended to have the baby at home. We know that they just...
Some things don't vanish when you delete them. They vanish when what actually happened gets revealed. Think about what he's really saying there. Deletion isn't the issue here. What actually happened is the issue. Then he released the line that absolutely froze everyone in place. No yelling, no direct accusations, just calmly stating, "The firstborn child may not belong to the man the public believes." No names mentioned, no finger pointing, just suggestions sharp enough to cut through steel. With that one image, that one bracelet, that one erased account, the entire narrative shifted. Because now it wasn't purely speculation or theory or rumor floating around. Now there was something visual, tangible, something people could examine with their own eyes.
Was a possession, something carried, something guarded, something not meant for public eyes. And once that realization set,
Analyze independently, draw their own conclusions from. Once that happened, there was no reversing course. Now, here's where someone entered the conversation who people couldn't easily dismiss. Trevor Engelson, Meghan Markle's first husband. The guy who basically got erased from her narrative like he was some embarrassing chapter. She wanted everyone to forget existed. For over 10 years, he maintained complete silence. Zero public statements. Said nothing during her rise to fame on Suits. Kept quiet during the wedding that captivated the entire world. Remained silent through the royal years, the drama, the constant headlines. Until now. Until this moment when everything else was already falling apart. When Trevor finally did speak, he didn't arrive angry or bitter or looking for payback.
Extracts, very juicy stuff.
If there's one thing Tom Bauer understands better than anyone, it's timing. He doesn't lob.
He arrived worn down, exhausted, like someone who'd been carrying something impossibly heavy for way too long and finally decided to set it down. Instead of throwing around accusations, he simply explained his experience. Told his story calmly, like someone who just wanted the truth out there after years of keeping it locked inside. He described watching Meghan transform over time. Described how her drive slowly consumed everything else in their relationship. How closeness got replaced by distance and secrets. How openness disappeared behind walls. How her international connection started growing rapidly right alongside her career advancement in ways that didn't always make sense for where she was professionally. Then he got into the night that's permanently burned into his memory. A hotel encounter he can't forget no matter how much time passes.
Prince Harry has dropped a shocking confession. And Meghan Markle is in tears.
He remembered specific details with unusual clarity. The smell of coffee mixing with cleaning products in the air, the way elevator doors closed with that heavy mechanical sound, lighting that made everything feel unreal. Then someone emerging from Meghan's suite, not sneaking out, not acting caught or guilty, just leaving like it was completely routine. Someone with an unfamiliar accent Trevor couldn't identify or place. Someone moving with total confidence who didn't react awkwardly when spotting Trevor there, who seemed completely unbothered by the situation. Like finding a husband standing there was just another Tuesday. Trevor said Meghan's response is what haunted him most. She stayed completely composed when she spotted Trevor. No panic, no defensiveness, no emotional reaction. She shifted gears instantly, like watching someone's mind recalibrate in real time. She didn't attempt denying anything or explaining circumstances away.
Do you remember when Prince Harry said this last week?
Beginning of 2020, I was scored the high.
Instead, she repositioned the entire situation. Framed it as business networking, a professional opportunity, something Trevor couldn't grasp because he wasn't thinking big enough. Made Trevor feel small for even raising questions. Then she dropped a line that Trevor said still echoes in his mind perfectly. Her exact words, "This is the type of person who transforms lives." Not romance, not feelings, pure calculation, pure advancement, using people as ladders. Years went by. The marriage dissolved. Trevor tried moving forward with his life, attempted leaving it all behind him. Then Columbia started appearing again throughout Meghan's royal chapter. Different circumstances, identical pattern emerging. That's when everything suddenly made sense to Trevor in a way that physically nauseated him.
The subject involved a child. Any response, they warned, could be framed as confirmation that something existed to deny. Another fact.
Those pieces that hadn't quite connected before suddenly fit together flawlessly. The international relationships, the mysterious travels, the calculated connections. The pattern wasn't something new. He'd simply been too close to recognize it clearly while living through it. Some connections don't actually finish when marriages end. They go dormant, they hibernate, they come back when conditions align favorably again. Eventually, everything happening on the outside finally broke through and crashed into Harry's world. And here's the thing about falling apart. There's usually two ways it happens. There's the public way where someone maintains their composure, smiles for cameras, does interviews, says appropriate things. Then there's what happens behind closed doors where nobody's watching and there's no prepared script to follow. Harry's collapse was the second kind, private, unmanaged, real, just raw emotion completely unraveling without anyone there to stage manage it.
Completely fabricated. We all know. The first interview, we all know that she never intended to go to the Portland hospital.
His friends caught on first, started noticing small shifts that gradually accumulated. His voice would tremble during phone conversations for no clear reason. His temper would blow up over tiny things that normally wouldn't register. He'd become obsessed with reading comment sections and watching reaction videos, spending hours absorbed in them. He'd claim he wasn't looking at any of it, wasn't reading feedback, wasn't watching response content. Complete lie. He was consuming every single piece, reading every comment, absorbing every theory circulating online, every accusation floating around, every bit of analysis someone posted. It was eating him alive from the inside. But the internet wasn't actually what destroyed him. That was just background noise. What really tore him apart was more fundamental and more devastating. It was calendar dates, timeline inconsistencies, numbers that refused to align properly, questions multiplying in his mind that he couldn't silence.
Foundation of the Sussex story. This isn't about headlines or hurt feelings. It's about documents, timelines, and private conversations.
How come absolutely everything about Archie's birth felt so tightly locked down? Why did every single detail seem so carefully managed and orchestrated? Why did the entire situation feel so isolated and removed from any standard process? These questions weren't coming from tabloids or online commenters. They were coming from deep inside his own thoughts, which made ignoring them completely impossible. Eventually, those internal questions had to surface verbally. According to what's been reported, Harry finally vocalized the words during a private conversation. Asked what he'd been avoiding asking for who knows how long. Why won't you take the test? Not delivered angrily, not as an accusation, not making demands or hurling allegations around, just asking. Actually more like pleading, desperately hoping for an answer that would eliminate all the doubt gnawing at him.
They exist inside systems of benefit, status, wealth, access, visibility, and when those
wanting someone to provide a reason to stop questioning his entire reality. The way he apparently asked wasn't like issuing a challenge. It sounded more like begging for comfort that wouldn't arrive. Meghan's response? She didn't cry or break down emotionally, didn't get defensive or start explaining or offer any reassurance. She froze completely, went totally still. Like the question had triggered some internal emergency system. Then she responded, but not with actual answers, with a counterattack. Immediately flipped the entire exchange. "How dare you," she reportedly demanded. "After what I've given up, after what I've sacrificed being here." She transformed it into a loyalty test. Made it about Harry choosing to believe the media, the critics, Tom Bauer, the online masses, everyone except her. Positioned him as the betrayer for even raising the question.
But as a reminder, he went whinging to the BBC about how he can only come to the UK if he's officially...
Harry broke. Not in a measured, controlled manner like decades of training had taught him. Not like someone who'd spent his entire life learning careful conflict management. He broke like someone whose whole identity was shattering beneath him. Like someone who'd hit an absolute limit. His response reportedly came out completely unfiltered. "This isn't them. This is me not knowing if my son is mine." That statement altered everything in the space between them. Because once words like that get spoken aloud, once they physically exist in the air separating two people, there's no reversing them, no unhearing what was said, no acting like the conversation never happened. They're simply there now, fixed in time, unchangeable. So what happened after those words got spoken? Meghan didn't provide reassurance, didn't offer comfort or understanding or any attempt to ease his fears. She delivered an ultimatum instead.
There are scandals, and then there are detonations that rip apart the very fabric of a family's narrative. What happened live on national television when...
The exact phrasing matters here because it exposes everything. According to reports, her words were, "If you force this, you destroy us." Not, "If you're mistaken about this." Not, "There's nothing hidden." Not, "Let me show you something." Simply, "If you look." That distinction is enormous. Because when someone's got nothing to hide, they don't build walls. They don't avoid simple answers. They say, "Look as closely as you want because I've got nothing to worry about." But when someone starts putting up barriers the moment questions get asked, that tells its own story. Harry reportedly walked out of that space without saying another word. No response, no agreement, no argument. Simply left. Meanwhile, outside those walls, the world kept getting louder and messier by the hour. Anonymous accounts claiming palace insider knowledge started appearing across social media.
He detonates them. The question on everyone's lips isn't about royal protocol or palace politics anymore.
Posting assertions about delays in Archie's official recognition, suggesting documentation problems that hadn't gotten resolved. Others discussed unusual, behind-the-scenes meetings that supposedly occurred. The type of gatherings that don't typically happen in contemporary royal circles. Nothing was confirmed through official channels. Nothing got verified by mainstream outlets. Yet everything was spreading, getting shared, building serious momentum across multiple platforms. Tom Bower maintained his approach, kept circling back to variations of the same central observation. His delivery stayed calm throughout. No emotional reactions, no personal attacks. Simply continued pointing out that individuals with nothing to conceal don't act this way. Those with clean consciences don't dodge simple solutions. Those who've got nothing to worry about.
The royal family's website has officially been updated to include the titles of Harry and Meghan's children. For more information on the...
Don't construct barriers around basic questions. He'd phrase it differently each time, use alternate wording, approach from various angles. But his core message remained unchanged. That consistency made dismissing him as biased or agenda-driven increasingly difficult, because he wasn't launching attacks. He was noting behavioral patterns and questioning why they existed. Something interesting shifted in public perception during this period. The question, "Is this real?" got gradually replaced by something more problematic. Why hasn't someone ended this? Because consider the logic. When an allegation is completely baseless, eliminating it is typically straightforward. You present facts, disproving it. You display documentation contradicting it. You offer information making it impossible to maintain.
Deceive the public about the birth data and time of the whole event.
Tom Bower just tore open a door no one was supposed
The allegation collapses because reality doesn't support it. But when an allegation persists, continues building, keeps gaining traction, despite intense attention and scrutiny. Observers start wondering why the most obvious solution remains unused. It's not even about whether people believe the allegation is accurate anymore. It's about noticing the allegation hasn't been terminated. There's a test available. It exists. It's obtainable. It would provide conclusive answers nobody could dispute. If the test gets completed and demonstrates one outcome, the entire situation resolves. If it demonstrates another outcome, well, that opens an entirely different conversation. But as long as the test stays avoided, as long as that option goes unused,
this idea of a royal reconciliation, and we have some of the top aides having these.
the questions don't fade. They expand, they circulate, they intensify. That's where everything sits currently. Not at some conclusion, not at some resolution, but stuck in this strange, suspended state where everyone's watching for something that could resolve everything immediately. Watching for answers that should be straightforward to provide if they're legitimate. Watching for clarity that continues not arriving. The extended duration of this watching makes believing in a clean resolution increasingly difficult. Because eventually, avoiding answers stops functioning as a strategy and starts functioning as an answer itself. Here's the reality about doubt. Once it enters someone's mind and settles in deep enough, whether it's actually justified becomes almost irrelevant. The damage happens regardless of what's actually real.
What followed wasn't just a scandal, it was the total annihilation of everything Harry and Meghan had built on a foundation of...
Right now, inside a mansion filled with sunlight and carefully managed public images, Harry's dealing with a realization that comes without any instruction manual. The rebellion that defined his adult identity. The family relationships he severed. The royal life and privileges he surrendered. All of it potentially given up for something he never personally confirmed or checked himself. Whether his current doubts are based on facts or not has become secondary, because doubt doesn't discriminate between what's real and what's not. It simply consumes, burns through relationships, trust, certainty, sense of self. Everything gets destroyed in its path. What started as a modern fairy tale isn't just showing stress fractures now. It's actively collapsing, hemorrhaging in real time while the world observes. And everyone's watching for one incredibly straightforward thing that could settle everything immediately. Not dramatic statements, not angry confrontations.
Exposing the ugliest royal truths, many of which turned out to be eerily accurate. And now he's lit the match on what might be the most...
Not more speculation or defense. Just one simple answer. A basic test. Something requiring a few days that provides indisputable results. Something ending this entire situation instantly depending on what those results reveal. The option has existed this whole time. It's been accessible throughout, yet it remains unused, untouched, deliberately avoided. And while that option continues sitting there ignored, while speculation keeps intensifying, the absence of action grows deafening. That absence keeps amplifying. The longer this continues, the more difficult imagining any clean resolution becomes. Any neat ending where everyone walks away without permanent scars.
There are moments when silence stops being calm and starts feeling heavy. This was one of them.
This isn't a conclusion. This isn't where loose ends get tied up with satisfying answers. This is the suspended moment before everything either stabilizes or completely disintegrates, where one choice could alter the entire trajectory. But until that choice actually gets made, until someone takes definitive action, we're all frozen here, suspended in uncertainty, watching to see which direction this ultimately goes. And honestly, this suspended waiting might be the most excruciating part. So there it is. Harry's facing a choice that changes everything. The question's still hanging there unanswered. What do you think happens next? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe. because new information keeps dropping and you won't want to miss what surfaces next. Thanks for watching.